Public pressure is mounting on New Jersey's powerful pension fund managers over their decision to invest public dollars into a controversial tech company. At a state investment council meeting on Wednesday, advocates urged officials to divest $130 million from Palantir Technologies, a data analytics firm with deep ties to ICE and other federal agencies. Opponents argue the investment makes New Jersey complicit in aggressive immigration enforcement action happening all across the U.S. Our budget and finance reporter John Reitmeyer covered the hearing and has the latest as part of our Under the Dome series. John, always happy to have you in. These investment council meetings aren't necessarily known for being fiery. What stood out to you, and was this level of public engagement typical for what we'd see?
Yeah, great to be here with you today, and definitely not the type of meetings where you typically think about people coming in to raise concerns about some of the issues that we're seeing, whether it's playing out in some of our communities or really on the aggressive scale that's happening in Minnesota. I think probably what we're seeing in New Jersey is a lot of people thinking, like, what can I do in my daily life in reaction to this, because it's drawing such a visceral response. You've seen the Cardinal of the Newark Archdiocese of the Catholic Church speak out recently, and so it's really puncturing things, including making its way all the way to a state investment council meeting. That's not to say that there aren't times when people do raise concerns. The state has a roughly $80 billion public worker pension fund. That's bigger than the size of the state's annual budget. And 800,000 people in New Jersey rely on it, whether they're current or retired workers, their families, to fund their retirements. And a lot of times it's their only source of income. So there are times where issues, whether it's investments in fossil fuel companies, different things people do make the connection between politics and investing, but it's rare that we get as many people as there were at yesterday's hearing speaking out on one single issue, that's for sure.
And because oftentimes folks say when they feel helpless, they let their dollars do the talking for them, right? And so they really are urging the state to make this move, but as you report, state officials also have a fiduciary duty to those folks with the pension benefits. How do they sort of balance when they're being called out on this ethical level with the duty that they have for those beneficiaries?
Yeah, and that's where it gets really tricky, because for a lot of the people who are state employees, or they also will hire outside fund managers, they do have this duty to maximize returns and minimize risk. That's sort of agnostic to politics, right? That's a financial calculation. And New Jersey has one of the worst funded pension funds in the nation for public workers. There's been efforts in recent years to improve the state funding of the pension plan, but there were years where it was underfunded. So it's not a pension plan that's that can afford to be too picky in terms of losing investments. It's really trying to maximize the investment returns. That said, there are laws on the books in New Jersey that do ban certain types of investments. The state also has an ethics policy, so there are written policies, and then we get into times when an individual investment draws red flags or outcry from the public, and that's the situation we're in today.
And so is this within the laws of the state as far as Palantir and what it represents? And just remind us what it does do.
So it's a firm that does, it's a very successful firm that does a lot of data collection analysis using AI, and it is contracting with the federal government according to publicly available databases, including ICE. And so the issue is, and I don't know the exact date when the state launched this investment, right? This company's been around for a while. This probably predates all of the current events. The cleanest way for policymakers to handle this, if they do decide we don't want to be in the business of being a partner with ICE, essentially, through our tax dollars or through public worker pension contributions, would be to pass a law to ban investments in certain types of things, which is what was done, if you remember, just a few years ago. Then Governor Phil Murphy worked with lawmakers to ban investments in companies working in Russia and Belarus, and that was in response to the aggression and the war against Ukraine. And so there are other examples where lawmakers have stepped in and said, we do not want to see public pension funds used in this manner. And I think in this case, that would probably be the easiest way, because then you would order the state workers who do the investing to be hands-off, or to, in this case, divest.
Yeah, those foreign conflicts and the fossil fuels, like you mentioned, were the ones that immediately came to mind to me, because I can recall even small protests at the State House about that. Any indication, though, John, that the council will reconsider?
So there was no immediate response to the public comment yesterday, other than the chair of the council that oversees the investments saying, "We heard you. We're not going to do anything immediately, but we did hear your point of view, and thank you for your advocacy." So we'll see. There have been other calls for divestiture, including fossil fuels, and a lot of times they'll work with the boards on which the pension fund in New Jersey is very influential because of its size. They'll work to enact change through those board positions a lot of times versus full-on divestment. But we'll see what happens with this one for sure, because it's something that's drawing a lot of political attention, and the new governor in New Jersey has been very outspoken, including on ICE issues lately.
I wonder, too, given the proximity of some of these ICE actions that are happening within New Jersey, whether sort of the fact that it's happening in folks' backyards, if that makes this any different, or how it compares to some of the arguments that have been made in the past about divestment.
I think it brings it home, because there were stories that were told by those testifying that were personal stories. People in New Jersey, there was a statement read by somebody who had been detained by ICE, statements that were translated from Spanish. So I think what you see is these personal stories, and that does make it a New Jersey issue, and maybe moves it up the agenda than sort of the generic, we're against fossil fuel companies.
We know these are long, tedious meetings, so we're grateful to you that you always have an eye and an ear on them. You can read John's full story on it on our website, njspotlightnews.org. John, thanks as always.
You're welcome.